I just spent 2 hours watching all the new additions to all the different Apple operating systems in this year's WWDC keynote. I think I can break it down in about 5 to 8 minutes. This year's WWDC was dense. 2 hours of non-stop talk about changes to their operating systems, to the different tools and features that they're going to add. There's a lot to cover. And really, they could be broken off into several different categories. I want to talk about things like privacy and the sort of social media implications that they are going to have with some of their message app changes in other videos. This video is going to be basically 5 things that we got that I wanted to get and 5 things that I didn't get. So with that, I'm going to start with the most nerdy one, which is Xcode. I wanted Xcode, which would give us the ability to code for all sorts of Apple devices on the iPad. They didn't add that, but they did put something close. They upgraded Swift Playgrounds. Going forward, you should be able to write iPhone and iPad apps right on the iPad. So the Files app does have problems, and we had hoped for more. We had hoped that they would add a lot of features that would allow you to see why files weren't copying or how long it was going to take, especially since we're doing a lot of stuff in the cloud and it's not really clear if stuff's getting uploaded or downloaded, how long it takes. So it sounds like they're not going to do much with that, or if they do, it's going to be in little bits and pieces because they didn't mention any of that. Another thing I'd been hoping for a long time is multiple logins. Android apps can do it, Apple TV can do it. Even iPads can do it, but only if you have some kind of educational special version of iPadOS. You can't really do it now. But what they did give us in place of that is something called Focus. Focus allows you to hide certain types of notifications. You can basically create a profile. And part of that profile may be the ability to hide pages on your home screen. So you could have a page that just has games or just has movies and television. And then you have a page that has your work stuff. And when you switch from one focus to another focus, it would hide the games and the TV, so you'd only have the work stuff. Or you could go to fun mode and it would hide the work stuff and you just have the fun stuff. One of the big things that I wanted and we got is the ability to put widgets on an iPad. As somebody who uses his iPad a lot, I have to say I've really fallen in love with how iPhones allow you to make the home screen kind of a control center where you have all sorts of useful information or useful functions that are very focused on what you want to do. And I really missed it over this past year with iPad. So it's nice to see that actually arrive. And speaking of how the iPad uses its home screen, they upgraded how multitasking works in some meaningful ways. Previously, you've had to put all of your apps in the dock that sits at the bottom, because if you're in one app and you want to add a second app to your multitasking, that was the only place you could get the apps. But now they've updated it. While you're using one app, when you choose to add a second app, they make it very easy to pull it up from the home screen itself. The other thing that they did that I thought was really helpful is you just have buttons to tell the operating system where you want the app to go. And it's fun to be able to drag apps around and have them expand in a particular region, but understanding exactly where that is very difficult. I found that I've gotten used to it, but when I try to teach it to somebody else, it's very confusing to know when something's going to turn into slide over, when it's going to become half the screen, how to drag it up or down. There are new features with just touching the 3 dots at the top and then choosing where you want it to go seem a lot more to the point, especially since there's only a couple of options that you could choose anyway. But the big issue is now you can use your home screen more effectively on the iPad without feeling like it all has to be stuffed into the dock at the bottom. Another big thing that people were hoping for, or if not hoping for, certainly musing about, was the idea that now that the iPads have the M1 processor, which is the same that their desktop computers have, will they have one operating system to rule them all? One of the things that they did to kind of blend between them is this really sophisticated tool called Universal Control. With Universal Control, you can be working in the iPadOS environment, but use the mouse and keyboard from your Mac, which means you can work on something in one of those apps that's really fantastic on the iPad, say Procreate, and then you can drag it to an app that only exists on the MacBook, say Final Cut, which is what Craig Federighi did in his demonstration. This is obviously not a unified operating system, but it brings them closer. I still predict that they're going to make something and they'll call it AppleOS. and it'll basically be one operating system across all of the devices. Maybe. We'll see. For people like me who work with video, there was one big disappointment. We had hoped that Apple would release a version of Final Cut, its video editing software, for the iPad. They didn't do it. They didn't mention it. There was no hint. They didn't take their iMovie app that's on the iPad and make it any better. Nothing. You know, it was a real missed opportunity. iPadOS 15 won't come out until maybe September, October of this year, which means if the next version of the operating systems offer anything to make the M1 really shine on an iPad, we will have to wait a year and a half from now. That's basically fall of 2022, unless they decide to start releasing those apps somewhere in the middle, which doesn't seem to be their style. Well, that's my general overview of some of the new features that I think most people will be able to use or will want to use, and my general take on what WWDC had to offer. I want to go into a lot more depth for security, lots of big changes for privacy and security. I'll do that in my next video. Until then, let me know if you have any questions or ideas, and maybe like and subscribe, you know, for fun. And I'll see you later.